Hey, what's up? Stephanie, the English coach here from EnglishFulltime.com. In this video, we are going to talk about some of the reasons why people might not understand you when you speak English, so you can improve your clarity and so people understand you the first time and they don't say, hey, what do you mean by that? What did you say? I don't understand you. Can you repeat yourself, please? Now, you might think that the reason people don't understand you is because of your pronunciation. And yes, sometimes it is because of that. That is the most obvious culprit. So we are going to start there. But there are other reasons why people might not understand you that are just as important as pronunciation and sometimes even more important. So let's jump into it. The first reason why people might not understand you is because you are mispronouncing words in English. However, there are many ways to mispronounce words. You might use incorrect sounds, you might add a syllable that shouldn't be there, you might drop a syllable that should be there, or you might stress the word incorrectly. So let me give you some examples. The word chocolate, chocolate. Notice that this word has two syllables. Chocolate, chocolate. However, I have heard lots of English learners pronounce this word with three syllables. Chocolate, chocolate, chocolate. Okay? The word vegetable. Vegetable has three syllables. Vegetable, vegetable. However, I have heard lots of English learners pronounce this word with four syllables. Vegetable, vegetable. Now let's use both of these words in a sentence. Chocolate is not a vegetable. Chocolate is not a vegetable. Now let's add in those extra syllables from before. Chocolate is not a vegetable. Chocolate is not a vegetable. Do we still understand it? Yes, we do. However, every time you change the pattern, right? Change the pattern in English, the pronunciation, or adding something that shouldn't be there, removing something that should be there, it could be confusing to your listener. Or at any rate, it gives them more to think about. Their brain has to filter through more things and go, okay, she said this, but she meant that. He said this, but he meant that. Once in a while, it's okay because we can still understand what you're saying from context clues. But sometimes when you do this, whatever you're saying will be completely incoherent to your listener. They won't understand it at all. Let me give you an example. One time I was in Argentina talking to a guy in Spanish. I used to live in Argentina for a while. And he found out that I was from California. And he goes, oh, wow, California. Have you ever been to Yosemite? And I was like, Yosemite, like, what is that? And he's like, oh, come on, like, Yosemite. And I'm like, I've never heard of this place before, so no, I don't think I've ever been there. And he goes, oh, that's interesting. It's like a super famous national park. And I was like, oh, you mean Yosemite? And he's like looking at me like, what? And then we figured out that when he said Yosemite, he was talking about Yosemite National Park. And I'm like, yes, I've been there. I used to go camping there when I was a kid with my family. So what he did here was he pronounced the word in Spanish with Spanish sounds, Spanish pronunciation, and he changed the stress of the word. He said Yosemite instead of Yosemite, okay? So he changed the stress of the word, he did not use English sounds to pronounce the word, and he pronounced it in Spanish, specifically Argentinian Spanish. Now, something else I noticed when I was living in Argentina is that people do this as well with the names of actors or famous people. They pronounce them using the phonology of their native language. So for example, the actor Johnny Depp, that's how I say his name, Johnny Depp. But in Argentina, they say Johnny Depp, Johnny Depp. And when I first heard that, I was like, whoa, that's not how we say his name. But then, of course, I realized, hey, that's how they say it over there using the phonology of their language. English has a different phonology, so words are pronounced differently. Now, you have to be aware of this when it comes to proper nouns, names of places and people. You might say these names one way in your native language using the phonology that you have in your native language, but English uses a different phonology. And when you're communicating with English speakers, if you jump into your language to say a word in English like Johnny Depp, okay, or Yosemite, people might not understand you. So what I recommend here is really mastering pronunciation in English. There's no other way around it. Really master the sounds of the English language, work on word stress, all of those things. And I actually have a lot of resources that can help you master your pronunciation in English, but I will wait until the end of the video to tell you about them. Okay, so now with all of that said, I actually have some bad news because you could use totally correct pronunciation, but if you use correct pronunciation with incorrect rhythm in English, you will still sound unnatural and unclear. And to help you really understand this, I'm going to give you a few examples now. I have some example sentences, and I'm going to pronounce every single word in the sentence perfectly, but I'm going to use incorrect rhythm, and hopefully you'll see what I mean. Okay, so the first sentence is, I am at home right now, but later I will go out for dinner. Again, I am at home right now, but later I will go out for dinner. So here I am assigning the same length of time to each syllable within the sentence. And we actually don't do this in English. This is unnatural. So here's how I would say this sentence in English to make it sound natural. I'm at home right now, but later I'll go out for dinner. I'm at home right now, but later I'll go out for dinner. Notice I'm joining words. I didn't say I am, I said I'm. I'm at home, home, I stretched that word a little bit. I'm at home right now, but later I'll go out for dinner. But later, I'll go out I said all, not I will. I contracted it. Here's another example. It is going to be a long day. It is going to be a long day. Here I'm pronouncing everything perfectly fine. Like the pronunciation, the actual sounds I'm using is fine, okay? But the rhythm is off. It doesn't sound natural at all. So that's not actually how I would say it. First, I would contract going to, and I would say gonna. It's going to be a long day. It's going to be a long day. Notice I'm stretching long day. It's going to be a long day. Okay, let's do this with one more example. I would not have asked if I already knew the answer. I would not have asked if I already knew the answer. Okay, that doesn't sound natural. I would say, I wouldn't have asked if I already knew the answer. I wouldn't have asked if I already knew the answer. Now look at the contraction that's happening in the first part of that sentence. Instead of saying I would not have, I say I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have asked. I wouldn't have asked if I already knew the answer. If I already knew the answer. So the lesson here is the more natural your rhythm is, the more natural you will sound in English. And rhythm is not necessarily the same thing as pronunciation. It's tied to pronunciation. It's part of pronunciation. But when people think of pronunciation, they're generally thinking of the actual sounds that are coming out of their mouth. They're not thinking of the timing of those sounds. And the timing is related to rhythm. Okay, another thing that can make you unclear when you're communicating in English is the overuse of pronouns. Pronouns are the small little words like he, she, him, it, they, them. Now, these little words are great because they can help you get your message across in a more concise way and avoid being repetitive, like overusing someone's name or something like that. However, when people rely too heavily on these words in their communication, they can easily become unclear. Let's look at this sentence. He said he would call him when he got home. He said he would call him when he got home. So when you have a sentence like this, hopefully we already know who is being talked about. But he said he, who, would call him, who, when he, who, got home. Okay, so do you see how without using people's names here, it can get very confusing who's going to do the calling, who's going to receive the call? So some tips to avoid this. Use names, okay? Use names, provide context, and be specific in your communication. If you're going to use a pronoun is there to replace a noun. Make sure that you've already mentioned the noun explicitly, that you've been very clear about what that noun is, so you can provide an anchor for yourself when you're communicating. You discuss something, you give it a name, you say what it is, and later you refer back to it with a pronoun, okay, in a clear, direct manner so people understand, oh, when he says it, he's referring to this. When he says them, he's referring to that, okay? And you have to set up these anchors for yourself in your communication to be clear, and it's better to over communicate than to under communicate. That way you guarantee the clarity of your message. And I know it takes more effort, it takes more time, and sometimes it feels like, oh, I just don't want to communicate at this level right now. But I guarantee you're setting yourself up for success if you do that. And if you get lazy in your communication and you start overusing pronouns, people are going to get confused very fast. You're going to have to repeat yourself, and it's going to be a frustrating experience for everyone, for yourself and for your listener or whoever you're communicating with. Now, a quote here from my husband. He said this once and I thought it was so profound. I wrote it down. He said, "Our minds are lazy and they move fast." So sometimes we actually have to slow down our own minds, okay, and think deeply as we communicate so we communicate well and so people understand us. Okay, so the next reason people might not understand you in English is actually simple and relatively easy to fix. You might be speaking with a quiet, unsupported voice. So what do I mean by this? A quiet voice is just a voice that is not very loud. It's difficult to hear, but you also don't want to yell to be heard, right? You want to speak like you're trying to be heard, but you don't want to yell. And the way to do this is by supporting your voice with your diaphragm so you can project, okay? So you have to really engage. First of all, you have to have good posture, right? Shoulders back. And you have to engage the muscles here in your chest, in your back, and in your belly. And what you do is you expand this area, you fill your lungs with air, and then you're kind of like pushing the air down as you're pushing it up, right? To create this compression, and that helps push your voice across the room. Now, obviously, there will be some times where you don't want to have a big booming voice, okay? But when you support your voice, so many things will happen. First of all, your voice will not be quiet. It won't be difficult for people to hear you. You will be able to project, right? When you're talking to other people, they will be able to hear you clearly, even if you have to speak over noise. And your voice will not get as tired when you use it, because when you're not supporting your voice well, you can get a scratchy feeling in your throat. You won't feel as good when you talk, and you won't be able to talk for long periods of time or lecture. And I don't know if you even talk for long periods of time, but it's definitely helpful to support your voice. Plus, you actually just sound more confident, much more confident when you support your voice when you speak. Okay, and the last thing I want to talk about in this video is intonation. Sometimes people might not understand you when you're speaking English because you're using intonation incorrectly. We have certain patterns in English, intonation patterns, that communicate specific ideas, thoughts, beliefs, etc. And if you use the incorrect pattern, people might think you're joking when you're not actually joking. They might think you're being sarcastic when you're being serious, right? So it can be very frustrating when you say something and you're like, I pronounced the words correctly, I used the correct rhythm, the words I'm using are clear, and people still don't understand me. Like, what is going on? Then it might be a problem with your intonation. People might even think you're being rude when you're not being rude. Intonation is so important in English, probably in every language, but let me give you some examples. If I say, I speak English, I speak English, English, see how it goes down at the end? That is showing certainty. I am simply stating a fact. If I say, I speak English, I speak English, I sound sarcastic. It's like, why are you saying it like that? Why are you saying it like you don't actually speak English? And there's another variation I want to show you. Listen, I speak English. I speak English. Okay, did you hear how it went up in the very beginning? I speak English. I speak English. Here, I'm like, no, 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 no. I speak English. Maybe somebody was doubting me, and so I clarified. So you can see how the intonation, I'm saying the same sentence with the same words, the same pronunciation, the same rhythm. I'm just changing the intonation and the message is changing. Let me give you another example. And this is an example of how you can potentially come across rude without even meaning to come across rude. Let's look at this sentence. You got a raise? You got a raise? When I say it like that, you got a raise? I'm raising the intonation at the end. And I'm excited, I'm showing genuine curiosity, there's no judgment in my voice or anything like that, right? You got a raise? Like, wow, that's great, that's wonderful. How cool. But if I say it like, you got a raise, now it sounds like, I don't believe you're even deserving of a raise. Why did you get a raise? You got a raise? Okay, so the difference here is, you got a raise? and you got a raise. So it's so subtle, right? How the intonation changes. But you really want to work on your intonation so that when you're serious, people know that you're serious. When you're joking, people know that you're joking. And people don't think you're being sarcastic when you're not being sarcastic, or you're being rude when you're simply trying to show friendliness or genuine curiosity about something. Okay, so that is it for this video. However, I have a few things that I want to share with you. If you enjoyed studying pronunciation, intonation, rhythm, all of that here with me, you're definitely going to want to hear this. So the first thing is I have a free course, a free pronunciation course that has over 7 hours of in-depth pronunciation training with me. If you have not taken this course already, I highly recommend it. Make time for it, study the material. There's so much in this course. We also talk about confidence, communication, so many different things. It's called the Fluent Pronunciation Challenge. You can sign up today. It's 100% free. The second thing, if you are struggling with the sounds of English, you're really struggling to master the different sounds, because that's pretty foundational work. In order to communicate clearly, the rhythm, intonation, connected speech, all of that is more advanced stuff. If you're struggling with the basics, the sounds, then I have a course that could help you with that. It's called the Amazing American Accent Sound Bank. And all I do in this course is teach you the sounds of English based on the way that I speak. So if you like how I speak, and if you want to imitate my sounds in your own English, then this is a great course for you to learn all the different sounds. I will link it below. So that's it. I will leave all the links in the description. I really hope this video was helpful. I hope you learned something, and I can't wait to see you soon in another video.